Hello friends, this is my third out of four video series where I'm going to talk about how to get complete control over colors that you're printing across all your communications, whether it's a packaging material, advertising material, or anything else that you're getting printed. My name is Manu Chaudhary. I'm the director of CTC Printers, one of the highest awarded print company in the country. I'm also a print technologist with Masters in Print Media from Rochester Institute of Technology, USA, and my core expertise is in color management. So the primary goal of this video is to get accurate colors and have complete control over the colors that we are printing on our printing presses. If you haven't seen my earlier two videos on the same topic, I request you to please watch them before proceeding to this one. In the first video, I had talked about the general frustrations that we face when we look at the final printed copy and somehow compare it with the sample that we had approved, whether it was a physical one or on the screen or even on a phone. The colors simply do not match. In the second video, I had talked about how using a spectrophotometer on the printing press, we can control the amount of ink that we are applying onto the paper. And this would ensure the solid patches of the primary colors of printing, like cyan, magenta, yellow, black, and also if there are any special colors, they are appropriately reproduced. But our designs do not contain only of solid patches of primary colors. We have lots of tints, there are lots of overlaps of different of these primary colors. There are lots of colors going around across the media and we still haven't found how to control them. So now let us compare the printing press with an artist who's trying to make a beautiful photo, make a beautiful painting on a canvas using oil colors, using his color palette and a few of his brushes. Now, uh, the colors which the artist is mixing on the palette, let's say he wants to paint a sky blue color. So he would take some shade of blue from his oil color box and he would try to mix it with white, yellow, depending on how he wants to portray the image. Now, this mix that he is doing on the palette is appropriately and accurately done on our graphic software. Also, the mix which he's going to take from the color palette using his brush and apply it onto the canvas, this is also very accurately passed in the information is passed on to the printing presses using printing plates, the aluminum plates. Now, so this area is very much sorted and using spectrophotometer we had also controlled the amount of ink that we are putting onto the paper. So in artist's case, which means the amount of ink that he will pick up from the color palette and put it on the canvas is also sorted. But does that solve the complete problem? Let's go ahead and see. Now, what he's going to do is the different artists, they have different grip on the brushes. Also, the amount of pressure they apply using this brush onto the canvas depends on different artists' personal choice. Also, the quality and the quality of the brush and the quantity of hair on the brush differ from brushes to brushes. Now, we can easily imagine that if we put more pressure using our brush onto the canvas, the ink is going to spread and it's not going to limit it to the exact spot where the ink was applied. Similarly, if you look at the brush, if some of the hair is missing or it is fizzled, the amount of ink that we have intended to apply, it just may be little less. Some areas would have less ink, some areas would have more ink. This phenomenon in printing terms is called dot gain or dot loss. Now, instead of the brush, the printing machine uses a lot of rubber rollers, different printing cylinders and blankets to essentially transfer the ink from the ink pot, you can say, and onto the paper. So essentially all of these things are doing what the brush does. Now, due to the inherent properties of these rubber rollers, the blankets and the printing cylinders, and also because of little bit of wear and tear across the years that we've been using this machine, the amount of transfer of ink that we had intended from the ink pan or the ink box to the paper may differ, resulting in dot gain and dot loss. Similar to what happened when we using the brush, we had applied little less pressure or little more pressure, or the quality of brush was inferior. So let's say we had wanted to print a color patch of 50% cyan and 25% magenta. And due to dot gain and dot loss, the color that got printed was according to, let's say, 45% cyan and 30% magenta, which means there was a drop in 5% of cyan and a 5% gain in magenta. This would completely change the color of the patch and would make it into a little more pinkish. So in order to get complete control over the colors that we are printing, it's very essential to have control over this. We periodically print a test chart. Here on the screen, you can see a sample test chart. So this test chart is called P2P25. You can find many other test charts similar to this, or you can even download this free test chart from the internet. This test chart is composed of lots of color patches, but what we are really interested in is this block right over here. Now, here we have the color patches of each primary color: cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And they are starting from 0, 5, 10, 20 in those intervals. We measure, see here it's written 100, 95, 90, 80, 70 in those intervals. So we measure these color percentages using again the same spectrophotometer, and we plot it on the graph. Now let's say this is the 50% cyan dot. We measure this 50% cyan dot and it turns out to be 75. And this 40% of cyan dot, it turns out to be 64. Now there is an international standard which specifies the percentage of dot gain that should be achieved during printing process. This standard says a 50% dot should be measured as approximately 64%. Similarly, the dot gains for all percentages is defined. This was required to make the print look richer and look real. If the dot gains are less, the images would look very flat, and if the dot gains are higher, the image would turn very dark, and a lot of details in the image will be lost. So essentially a 50% dot should appear like 64, but this is again depending on the different printing process and on the different substrate that we are printing. So in our example, we are considering normal sheet fed offset printing and printing on a coated substrate. So it says a 50% dot should appear like 64. But in our case, when we measured it, it came out to be 75. And a 40% dot came out to be 64. So what we really need to do is get a software which does this. Now this is the gray dotted line here shows the input that we have provided onto the printing machine. The green line is showing the target values that we should get. So if you look at the input when it is 50, the green line is measuring around 64. So that's the target value that we should get. The blue line is the measured value of our printing machine. Now which in this case is showing around 75. So in order to make our printing machine print a 50% dot as 64 instead of 75, what we really need to do is find out at what percentage does our printing machine produce 64. So we can draw a horizontal line from this here, and we can draw a vertical line down. We can see that if the input was 40%, instead of printing our printing machine printing as per standard, which is around 53, it would have printed 64. So we have to do a find and replace of all 50% dot and replace it to 40%. And similarly, we need to do it for all dot percentages and for all colors. Fortunately, it's done in a software and it's done in less than a few seconds. And moreover, this software is available on all imaging devices on earth. So one can never give an excuse that we don't have the software to do this. It's just available free everywhere. All we need is the determination within ourselves that what we print it right. And that's it. The job is done. So whether you're using an old equipment, a new equipment, or whatever, you can control the parameters of dot gain, the amount of ink that is deposited on the paper, and you'll make yourself absolutely standardized irrespective of when you print, on what machine you print, and you get the same print each time and every time, of course within the tolerance range. So next time when you're selecting the print vendor for you, don't ask them how good is your quality, because everyone is going to answer the same. They're going to say they have the best machines on the planet, they have hired the best human resources available on the planet, they will give you the best quality possible. Oh, they are all going to answer the same. Instead, you can ask them, what about your calibration schedule? How regularly do you calibrate? Can you share your calibration data with us? If the vendor can prove it to you that they really understand the importance of calibration and they ensure that all of their machines are calibrated regularly, you can trust your vendor blindly, because each time and every time you ask them to print something, they're going to print in a very standardized way, in a very repeatable way. And that's what essentially a printing shop floor is supposed to do. If you want your prints to stand out, to be very glamorous, to be very vibrant, to be very bright, you should go to your graphics designer or the photographer to make the changes in the file, in the artwork itself. The printers, they are supposed to print each time, every time, repeatedly, the same colors, irrespective of when they print, on what machine they print. Thank you so much. That's for part 3 of the video. Look forward to seeing you on our part 4 part.